Hey you guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. If you've never seen me before, my name is Chelsea and I write books about black girls who aren't all that nice. And today, you guys, we are back with another installment of the Fantasy Author Guidance Counselor. And today we are talking about story Bibles specifically. Why? Because maybe I'm new to the game, but I just realized how great and fantastic story Bibles are as I was working on Project Necromancer. And as someone who was very much a self-identified pantser, having a story Bible has been game-changing. And I feel like coming from a pantser slash former pantser, there is some information that I was just like, oh, if someone had told me this earlier, I probably would have done this sooner. Because regardless of what you may think going into this video, I'm here to tell you that having a story Bible is incredibly useful, especially if you write fantasy. But if you write any kind of story or any kind of series, especially, having something to refer back to is game-changing. So let's get into this. So let's start at the beginning of what is a story Bible. A story Bible is basically any document that you keep with all of your reference information. Normally story Bibles have some type of organization, but they are meant to be a place to keep all of your notes for a particular story or a particular series. Basically, the purpose behind it is to make sure that your information doesn't get lost or overlooked, and to make sure that if you gave a character deep brown eyes in one scene, you don't turn around and give them piercing blue eyes in another one, right? It just helps keep all of your information organized. Let's talk about the benefits. The main one is just the organization aspect. Keeping all of your ideas in one place per story. And for a lot of authors, you may be like, of course, Chelsea, but if you think about it as authors, a lot of times we go for convenience, what's quick, and however we can get our ideas down on paper without forgetting it, right? So we have like a notes app, or we might have OneNote, or we might have Keep Notes, or whatever y'all use on Apple. I'm not an Apple girly, but you have all these quick notes, but then you might actually have your story in Google Docs, or you might have your stuff in OneNote on a separate page or a separate notebook, or you might actually handwrite things. And then inevitably over time, you have a couple notes here, a couple notes there, and you get to a point sometimes in your story where you're like, I know I wrote this. Where did I put that? And then it becomes this thing of searching for it, and that can become its own rabbit hole if you are not careful. So your story Bible just helps keep everything in one place. It also helps you identify whatever gaps might exist in your story. So this pertains to like your character development or your world building or your plot or whatever it is, because as you fill out your story Bible, it is very easy to see with your world building to be like, oh, I haven't actually figured out the gods, or I haven't actually figured out the magic system, or I haven't actually figured out what this spell is because the page where you're supposed to put it is blank. So it kind of gives you a big overview of what your story is and what you're missing and what pieces you need to fill in. Once you have the organization, one of the benefits is just the working memory. And I know a lot of us probably are like, oh, I'm good. Like it lives in my head. I don't need to write it down. But one thing that I've learned over the last couple of months is to not overestimate the amount of working memory that you have. And by working memory, I mean the active part of your brain that's holding on to information that you just swear up and down you will not forget, right? Even if you don't, your brain is still working to make sure that you don't. And that brain space could be dedicated to something else if you were to actually just write it down and not relegate space to it. It's like having too many tabs open on your browser. If you close out of it, your browser will run faster. So for your story Bible, having that reference information doesn't have to stay top of mind so that you remember. You don't have to constantly be remembering, don't forget that this character has this. And it may be like, I know this character. These characters are like real people to me. I would never forget. But then if something happens, you work on another project, you forget. Then it's like, oh, now you have to work to get that information back when you could have just written it down. So a really good example for this is a side character's eye color or favorite food or hairstyle in a particular scene. You may know your main characters up and down, but sometimes we have those characters where they're in this scene. You don't really know them as in depth as you know your other characters because they're only here for a chapter or two, right? Writing it down helps you to remain consistent. And if you're writing a series, it makes it very easy to be able to pull that character back without having to search your entire book for that one scene with that one character to see if you actually gave them a last name or if that made it into the final version of the book or you just thought about it but didn't write it down. See where I'm going with this? See where I'm going with this, right? But also, building out the information that doesn't necessarily go into the book is also what the story Bible is good for. Because as authors, I'm sure we've all seen the image, the meme, whatever you want to call it, of the iceberg, where the top of it, the little itty bitty portion at the top is what the reader sees. That's the finished book, and that's when they see you actually writing. But at the bottom is all the hours going into it. That's all the character sheets. That's all the plot development. That's all the research. That's all of the everything that goes into a book that most people don't see, but you as the author know. So even if the reader doesn't know that there used to be an ancient war that happened 3,000 years ago that had a hero who was whatever, the story doesn't take place there. That's not information that your reader has, but you know it because it influences other aspects of your world, of your story. Well, that's the type of stuff that you write down in your story Bible so that you don't forget. It's just really beneficial on multiple levels. I'm not just talking a good talk. I am now walking a good walk because I was not always a story Bible girly. I initially was like, no, I got this, especially when I was working on my Wrath of the Gods series with Brandy, with Jack, with Noble, with Sarah, with Najee. I knew all of them like the back of my hand. Like I knew their personalities. I know what they like. I know what they don't like. I know what they look like. But I have learned working on Project Necromancer that those things don't just live in my head with projects that I don't spend as much time with. And because the Wrath of the Gods series was like my first project, I knew it before I ever sat down to start writing. I ain't got time to spend 10 years with this idea before I really get into the nitty gritty of writing the story. So I have become a story Bible girly. I've become a plotting girly, and I may make a video in the future talking about how I figured out how to make plot grids work for me because they did not before. And I'm not even sure if I'm using it the way that other people use it, but like whatever, it works for me, right? But that being said, my story Bible has 3 major parts, right? I saw a lot of information and there were a lot of sections to a lot of story Bibles. Like it was very, very broken down. It was very compartmentalized. And I think that works well for some people. I am not that person. It doesn't work for me. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. But also, a lot of times I have found a lot of people do story Bibles before they write the book, like it's part of their plotting. Cool. If that works for you, it works for you. But for me, I need broader sections for the things that I really want to remember. I also create my story Bible while I'm writing the book. The 3 major parts of my personal story Bible are the chapters, the characters, and the world building. If you are thinking about creating your own story Bible, you can create sections however works for your brain. But like I said, I like to have 3 major parts. So the chapters are for everything that happens on a chapter level, right? So that's for my overall outline. Those are for links to my completed chapters. I write like 2 to 3 bullet points about what happened in it. And I keep all of that in a singular document so that when I'm going back through and I'm trying to figure out what happened, especially if I have to take a long break, like it's January. I was not writing over Christmas and New Year's. So it was helpful to come back and be like, oh, here we go. This is what happened in chapter 4. This is what happened in chapter 5. This is where I need to be at for chapter 6, etc., 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 etc. Right? But it's not just the quick look summaries. It's also the overall outline, chapter by chapter. And that is a lot looser. It's basically my outline, but it's very loose. It's like 1 sentence per chapter. It's like, it's in this person's perspective and this has to happen. My entire outline can fit on half a sheet of paper because that's how my brain works, because I'm still a pantser at heart. I need a lot of flexibility when I actually sit down to write. So that's what the chapters section of my story Bible looks like. I have links to where I cleaned it up, sent it to Ben, etc. So that when I get ready to put everything together, when I go through the editing process, it's like I already have links to the clean drafts ready to go, ready to share out to my beta readers, right? The second section is for my characters. And this is where I start getting a little bit more compartmentalized, but not very, because the way my brain is set up, if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. The character section is for keeping track of who shows up in the story, whether they are a main character or a side character, when they show up in the story, meaning like which chapter, and the things that I need to remember about their physical appearance and personality. I have my story Bible in Notion, so they're like sub pages, right? But this could work in like OneNote or Google Drive or anywhere you can have folders and subfolders, right? My big folders, characters. I have subfolders, main character and side character. And in the main character folder, I have documents for each main character. Side characters, I have the document for each side character as they show up. So I'm not planning this out ahead of time. If I need a character, they go into the appropriate folder. And whatever information I'm giving in that chapter as I'm writing it, that's what goes into their document. That way it's only like a line or two, and I'm not spending hours building out this character that is inevitably going to change or act differently than I want them to when I actually sit down to write it. That being said, the things that I keep on my character pages, I have their main description and I have what I call secondary descriptions. These are things where it's like, it doesn't really matter, but this is just kind of who they are. So one of my characters is very like 70s-esque, big afro, big hoops, big personality, very Southern, right? That's the type of stuff that I put in there so that when I'm writing her dialogue, I'm like, oh, she's Southern. This is how she talks. She's the type of person who would definitely say y'all, right? But that's not every character. The thing that I have found really helpful is just writing when these characters show up. So on the main characters page, I have by chapter. And for each chapter, like chapter 5, I just put a bullet point of every character who shows up. And if I remember, I'll go to their character page, and on the character page, it says appearance by chapter. And I'll be like, oh, this character first showed up in chapter 7. Boom. Now, if I ever need to go back, I need to figure out where I gave the most information about them. Most likely, I know it's in chapter 7. I know this sounds kind of like a lot as I'm talking, but really having it up as you're writing is really just like, boom, quick little note. On, I'll say Jason's page, boom, he showed up in chapter 7. Move on. You're still in the flow of things, right? And then the last big section for me is the world building section. And that is literally everything else. That's the gods, the maps, the magic systems, the spells, the incantations, the ideas, the everything else that needs to go into the book that is not specific. So that's also like the setting. Everything about the world goes into this section. And anything that is made up and specific to the book. There is a small section for research, but I usually don't have a lot of research for my fantasy stuff, mostly because I try not to use stuff that has real life physics in it, because that is confusing for me. That being said though, I like these sections because they're very broad and they fit exactly what I need to. And I focus primarily on like character development. I have very character driven stories. So that's usually my biggest section that I spend the most time in. All that being said, if you are interested in how my like literal story Bible for my latest project Necromancer, is set up, then for sure check out the Patreon, because I will be giving a walkthrough of it over there. And if I can, because I'm still very new to the Notion world, I will give you guys a template for it over on my Patreon. So sign up for that. Let's talk about who needs a story Bible. Every author who does not have a photographic memory needs a story Bible. Honestly and truly, like it's really for everyone to get your thoughts organized and everything written down, especially if you are writing a series, because if you get through book 1 and you write book 2 and then you need to go back to book 1, you know, it's really frustrating when you have to go get a physical book and flip through the pages and try to find the exact chapter, especially if your book is in multiple formats and you're referencing the paperback one day and then you're referencing the ebook another one, and they're on different pages, and then you have a hardback and it's also on a different page, and it's just like, ooh, this is fun. And I am speaking from experience. So trust me, if you have a series, write your stuff down. You will forget. I have forgotten things about We Are the Origin that I swore when I was writing it I would take to my grave. I was like, I'm going to remember release date. I'm going to remember when I hit publish and it went live, the exact moment that I got the cover art, the exact time in the chapter that this one thing happened. I didn't. I don't. I'd have moved on to the next project, next book, next series. It doesn't live in the brain rent free anymore. So write it down. Write it down. If you're writing multiple projects at the same time, having a story Bible is really helpful to just jump between projects. Also, speaking from experience, Project Necromancer is my main project, but there are also other projects that I'm working on that I'm already setting things up for so that when I'm ready for it, I can just jump into it pretty seamlessly. All that being said, I will add the caveat that I have definitely heard that, Chelsea, I don't want to do a story Bible because doing a story Bible stifles my creativity. I need to be able to have the freedom. I am a whole 100%, 1000% pantser, and planning in general just cramps my style. I get it. As someone who used to be a solid pantser, it honestly frees up so much of your brain space that you can be more creative when you're not having to remember things that you've already written. You don't have to remember the exact spelling of a character's name, especially if you gave them a unique one, or you don't have to remember what happened 3 chapters ago because this character has been gone for 3 chapters and you're like, oh, what happened? It saves a lot of time not having to flip back and reread and find it, and while you're there finding other mistakes or other things that you need to change, and it builds up. It makes your process a lot easier. At least it did for me. And I highly recommend trying it because I'm just the type of person where I'm like, if there is a skill or a resource that can make you better at what you do or make what you do easier, I'm like, try it. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. Like, take what you need, leave what you don't. But I also am a huge proponent of at least trying before saying that it doesn't work, just because other methods didn't work. Because I said the same thing about outlining, and there are lots of methods for outlining a book that just don't work for me. Like, they just don't work. And that may change in the future, but I'm also like, I tried it. I know for a fact that it doesn't work. I know why it doesn't work. And that also helps me make informed decisions about any resources that I want to use in the future. Where it's like, okay, this didn't work because of X, Y, and Z, right? So if someone presents me with a new resource, it's like, okay, this might work as long as it's not X, Y, and Z. We're going to leave that where it's at. And if you guys have watched all the way to the end of this video, let me know if you are a story Bible girly, boy, man, person, whoever. If you do story Bibles, let me know in the comments below. And if you do, tell me what you put in yours. Because like I said, I have 3 main sections, but if y'all have more, I would like to know what they are. If you don't do story Bibles, tell me why. I would just like to know. I'm curious. And as always, if you don't have anything else to say, you can always leave an orange heart in the comments, because that's what we're doing in 2024. And that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, I hope your days are lovely and your books are interesting. Bye, you guys.